The wind howled like a living thing across the Antarctic Research Station, rattling the reinforced windows and making the entire structure groan under the assault. Marcus Reed pulled his thermal jacket tighter as he checked the weather monitoring equipment for the third time that evening. The storm had been building for hours, and according to his instruments, it was going to be a brutal one. At 28, Marcus had spent the last 2 years in this isolated outpost, collecting climate data and atmospheric readings for the International Weather Research Council. He'd chosen the assignment specifically for its solitude, seeking refuge from a world that had grown too complicated, too demanding. Here, surrounded by endless white and the simple rhythm of scientific routine, he'd found a peace that had eluded him in the crowded cities of his past. The coffee maker gurgled in the corner of his small laboratory, filling the air with the rich aroma that had become his constant companion during these long polar nights. Marcus was reaching for his mug when a sound cut through the storm's fury, something that didn't belong to the natural symphony of wind and ice. It was a low, resonant hum, almost musical in quality, but distorted by the howling gale. Marcus frowned, pressing his ear to the window. Lightning never accompanied these polar storms, and aircraft avoided this region during weather like this. The sound came again, closer now, followed by what could only be described as an impact. Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and thermal gear. Years of Antarctic training had taught him that any deviation from the norm could mean life or death out here. He pulled on his insulated boots, wrapped a scarf around his face, and stepped into the storm. The cold hit him like a physical blow, even through his protective clothing. The wind threatened to knock him off his feet as he fought his way toward the source of the disturbance. His high-powered flashlight cut through the swirling snow, revealing strange marks in the ice that definitely hadn't been there during his evening rounds. Following the trail, Marcus discovered what looked like a small craft partially buried in a snowdrift about 50 meters from his station. The vehicle was unlike anything he'd ever seen, its surface seeming to shift between metallic silver and deep blue in his flashlight's beam. Frost was already forming across its sleek hull, but through what appeared to be a transparent section, he could make out a figure inside. "Hello?" Marcus called out, his voice nearly lost in the wind. "Can you hear me?" The figure moved, and suddenly a section of the craft dissolved away like mist. Marcus stumbled backward in shock as a woman emerged from the vehicle, or at least, she appeared to be a woman. Her skin held a subtle luminescence that seemed to emanate from within, and her hair, a striking shade of silver blue, moved as if it had a life of its own despite the driving snow. She collapsed to her knees in the snow, and Marcus saw dark fluid staining her form-fitting garment. Without thinking, he rushed forward, catching her before she could fall completely. "I need help," she whispered, her voice carrying that same musical quality he'd heard from her craft. Her eyes met his, and Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. They were unlike any eyes he'd ever seen, holding depths that seemed to contain starlight. "Of course," Marcus replied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded despite the impossibility of the situation. "Let's get you inside." Supporting her weight, he guided her through the storm back to his station. She was surprisingly light, but he could feel tremors running through her body. Whether from cold, pain, or something else, he couldn't tell. Inside the warmth of his laboratory, Marcus helped her to the small couch he used for his rare moments of relaxation. In the electric lighting, he could see her more clearly. She was breathtakingly beautiful, but in a way that was definitely not human. Her features held an otherworldly perfection, and her skin seemed to pulse gently with that inner light. "Thank you," she said, accepting the blanket he offered. "I am Kira Voss. I apologize for the intrusion." "Marcus Reed," he replied automatically, then caught himself. "Are you hurt?" "I saw blood, or what looked like blood." Kira glanced down at the dark stain on her garment and nodded. "My vessel was damaged during entry to your atmosphere. The impact worsened an existing injury." She touched her side gingerly, and Marcus could see her wince. "I have medical supplies," Marcus offered, though he wondered how useful human first aid would be for someone who was clearly not human. "If you'll let me take a look." Their eyes met again, and Marcus felt that strange flutter in his chest intensify. There was something about her gaze that seemed to see right through him, as if she could read the loneliness he'd been carrying for so long. "You are kind," Kira said softly. "Most of your species would fear what they do not understand." "Maybe," Marcus admitted, retrieving his medical kit. "But you're hurt, and there's a storm outside that could kill anyone. Species doesn't matter much under those circumstances." As he knelt beside the couch, Kira carefully lifted the edge of her garment to reveal the wound. It was a jagged tear along her ribs, seeping that same dark fluid. But as Marcus watched, the edges seemed to be slowly knitting themselves together. "Your physiology is different from ours," he observed, trying to maintain clinical detachment despite his fascination. "Yes," Kira agreed. "But the principles of healing are universal. Your kindness helps more than any medicine could." Marcus cleaned the wound as gently as possible, hyper-aware of every soft intake of breath from his patient. Her skin was warm to the touch, almost feverish, and that subtle luminescence intensified wherever he made contact. "Why were you flying in this storm?" he asked, partly to distract her from any discomfort and partly because he genuinely wanted to know. Kira was silent for a long moment, staring out the window at the swirling snow. "I was running," she finally admitted. "From a future I did not choose." Something in her tone made Marcus pause in his ministrations. "Running from what?" "An arrangement," she said, the words carrying a weight of sadness that made Marcus's heart ache in sympathy. "My people have traditions, expectations. I was to be bonded to someone selected for me, someone I could never love." Marcus found himself leaning closer, drawn by the pain in her voice. "So you left." "I fled," Kira corrected, meeting his gaze. "I took a scout vessel and ran as far as I could. Your world appeared in my navigation system as an unmonitored planet, somewhere I could hide until I determined my next course of action." "That must have taken incredible courage," Marcus said, and he meant it. The idea of leaving everything familiar behind, of launching yourself into the unknown rather than accepting a life without love, resonated with something deep inside him. Kira's expression softened. "Or incredible foolishness. I have no plan beyond survival." "Sometimes survival is plan enough," Marcus replied, securing a bandage over her wound. "The storm should pass by tomorrow evening. You can rest here until then." "You would harbor a fugitive?" Kira asked, and there was something almost playful in her tone despite the seriousness of the situation. Marcus considered this, looking into those starlit eyes. Every rational part of his mind screamed that he should contact the authorities, should report this impossible situation. But another part of him, a part that had been dormant for longer than he cared to admit, whispered that some things were more important than protocol. "I'd help someone who needed it," he said simply. Kira's smile was radiant, transforming her already beautiful features into something that made Marcus's breath catch. "Then perhaps my navigation system was more accurate than I realized," she said softly. "Perhaps I found exactly where I needed to be." As the storm raged outside and Kira settled into the warmth of his small sanctuary, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully ordered, solitary life was about to change in ways he couldn't even imagine. But looking at this mysterious woman who had literally fallen from the stars into his world, he found he wasn't afraid of that change. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. Marcus woke to the sound of gentle humming, a melody unlike anything he'd ever heard. For a moment, he lay still in his narrow bunk, wondering if he'd dreamed the entire previous evening. The storm had finally begun to subside during the early morning hours, and pale sunlight now filtered through the frost-covered windows of his quarters. The humming continued, accompanied by soft footsteps in the main laboratory. Reality crashed back over him as he remembered. Kira was here, the mysterious woman who had fallen from the stars into his isolated world. He dressed quickly and emerged from his sleeping area to find her standing before the large observation window, her silver-blue hair catching the morning light. She'd somehow cleaned the dark stains from her garment, and the wound he'd treated appeared to be healing with remarkable speed. "Good morning," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle her. Kira turned, and her smile was like sunrise breaking over the ice fields. "Good morning, Marcus Reed. I hope my movement did not disturb your rest." "Not at all," he replied, moving to start the coffee maker. "How are you feeling? How's the injury?" "Much improved, thanks to your care." She touched her side where the wound had been. "My people heal quickly when we feel safe and cared for. Stress and fear slow the process considerably." Marcus found himself studying her profile as she returned her attention to the window. In the clear morning light, her otherworldly beauty was even more striking, but it was the sadness in her expression that tugged at his heart. "Regrets?" he asked gently. "Contemplation," Kira corrected. "Your world is beautiful, Marcus. So pristine, so peaceful. I can understand why you chose this solitude." He poured 2 cups of coffee, offering her one. She accepted it with curiosity, inhaling the aroma before taking a tentative sip. Her eyes widened in surprise and delight. "This is wonderful," she said. "We have nothing like this on Australis." "Australis is your home world?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from her. Kira said quietly. "I suppose I no longer have the right to call it home." She took another sip of coffee, seeming to savor both the taste and the warmth. "Tell me about your life here, Marcus. It must be lonely." "I chose the loneliness," he admitted. "After my last relationship ended badly, after watching my parents' marriage crumble, I decided that isolation was preferable to disappointment." Kira studied him with those starlit eyes. "And now? Do you still believe that?" Before Marcus could answer, the sharp crackle of his radio broke the intimate atmosphere. "Station 7, this is base command. Marcus, you there?" Marcus's heart sank as he recognized the voice of Dane Holloway, his colleague and the closest thing to a friend he had in this frozen wasteland. Dane was supposed to be at the Coastal Research Facility, over 200 kilometers away. "I'm here, Dane," Marcus replied, pressing the transmit button while catching Kira's suddenly alert expression. "What's your status?" "I'm about 30 minutes out from your position. Had some interesting seismic readings from your area last night, wanted to check them out in person." "Everything all right out there?" Marcus's mind raced. Dane was thorough, observant, and completely by the book. There was no way to hide Kira's presence, and no way to explain her existence without raising questions that could destroy both their lives. "Everything's fine," Marcus said, hoping his voice sounded casual. "Storm knocked out some equipment, probably caused the unusual readings." "Copy that. See you in 30. As the radio fell silent, Marcus turned to find Kira already moving toward the window, her earlier relaxation replaced by tense alertness. "I should go," she said quickly. "I cannot involve you in my problems any further." "Go where?" Marcus asked, standing to face her. "Your ship is buried under snow, and even if it weren't, you said it was damaged. Besides, the temperature is still dropping. You wouldn't survive an hour out there." Kira's internal light flickered with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as emotional distress. "Then what do you suggest?" "Your friend will ask questions I cannot answer." Marcus looked around his small domain, his mind working furiously. Then inspiration struck. "The ice caves," he said. "There's a natural cave system about half a kilometer from here. I've been mapping them for my geological surveys. You could hide there while I deal with Dane." "That could work," Kira agreed, though uncertainty colored her voice. "But Marcus, if this person suspects anything, if he reports my presence?" "He won't," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "Dane's a good guy, but he's also lazy when it comes to paperwork. As long as nothing seems immediately threatening, he'll file a routine report and move on." They quickly gathered supplies, food, water, thermal blankets, and a portable heater. Marcus found himself acutely aware of Kira's every movement as they prepared for her temporary exile. When their hands brushed while packing the supplies, he felt that same electric connection from the night before. "There's something I need to tell you," Kira said as they prepared to leave. "About why I really came to Earth." Marcus paused, sensing the weight of whatever she was about to reveal. "What is it?" "I didn't choose your world randomly," she admitted, her luminescence dimming with what looked like shame. "My people have been monitoring Earth for some time. We've studied your species, your languages, your cultures. When I decided to flee, I specifically chose Earth because I'd become fascinated by your kind." "Fascinated how?" Marcus asked softly. "Your capacity for individual choice," Kira said, meeting his gaze. "On Australis, our lives are predetermined by the Council of Elders. Our careers, our living arrangements, our life bonds, everything is decided for us based on genetic compatibility and social optimization. But humans, you choose your own paths, your own partners, your own destinies." The sound of an approaching snowmobile cut through their conversation. Dane was early. "We have to go," Marcus said urgently, shouldering the supply pack. "Now." They moved quickly through the thinning storm, Marcus leading the way toward the cave system he'd discovered months earlier. The entrance was partially hidden by an overhang of ice, making it nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Inside, the caves opened into a surprisingly large chamber, with crystalline formations that caught and reflected their flashlight beams. The portable heater quickly began to warm the space, and Marcus arranged the thermal blankets to create a comfortable resting area. "This is actually quite beautiful," Kira observed, running her fingers along one of the crystal formations. To Marcus's amazement, the crystals began to glow faintly at her touch. "How did you do that?" he asked. "Resonance," Kira explained, seeming surprised herself. "My people evolved alongside crystalline formations on Australis. We can sometimes interact with similar structures." She smiled at him. "It seems your world and mine have more in common than I expected." The distant sound of the snowmobile growing closer reminded them both of the urgency of their situation. "I have to go," Marcus said reluctantly. "I'll come back as soon as I can get rid of Dane." "Marcus," Kira called as he turned to leave. When he looked back, she stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Thank you. For everything. I know this is dangerous for you." "It's worth it," he replied without hesitation, and realized he meant it completely. Their eyes met in the crystal-lit cave, and Marcus felt time slow around them. There was something building between them, something that transcended species and circumstances. He found himself leaning closer, drawn by forces he didn't understand but didn't want to resist. The sound of his name being called across the ice fields broke the spell. Dane had arrived. "I'll be back," Marcus promised, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll be waiting," Kira replied, and something in her tone suggested she meant more than just his return from dealing with Dane. Marcus made his way back to the station, his mind reeling from what had just passed between them in the cave. He'd spent 2 years in isolation, convinced that he was better off alone, but now he wasn't sure of anything except that the thought of Kira leaving felt like it would tear something vital from his chest. Dane was already unloading equipment from his snowmobile when Marcus reached the station, his weathered face split by a familiar grin. "Marcus. Good to see you, man. This place looks like it took a beating from the storm." "Nothing I can't handle," Marcus replied, forcing casualness into his voice. "What's this about seismic readings?" As Dane launched into a technical explanation of the unusual energy signatures his instruments had detected, Marcus found his attention wandering to the cave system where Kira waited. Whatever was happening between them, whatever impossible connection was forming, he knew his life had already changed irrevocably. The only question now was whether he'd be brave enough to follow where that change might lead. "You seem distracted," Dane observed, studying Marcus with sharp eyes. "Everything really okay out here?" Marcus met his friend's gaze steadily, making the choice that would define everything that followed. "Everything's perfect," he said. "Better than it's been in years. And despite all the complications, all the unknowns and dangers ahead, he realized he was telling the absolute truth. Marcus spent 3 agonizing hours playing the role of the isolated researcher while Dane conducted his investigation. Every minute felt like an eternity as he watched his colleague examine the area where Kira's ship had crashed, now mostly buried under fresh snow from the storm. "These energy readings are unlike anything I've seen," Dane muttered, adjusting his scanner as they walked the perimeter. "Almost like some kind of exotic matter interaction with the local magnetic field." "Probably just unusual aurora activity," Marcus suggested, his heart hammering as Dane's equipment beeped increasingly close to where Kira's damaged vessel lay hidden. The storm was pretty intense. Dane straightened, giving Marcus a long, searching look. "You know, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you this jumpy. You sure everything's all right?" Before Marcus could answer, a new sound cut through the crisp Antarctic air, the unmistakable hum of an approaching aircraft, but unlike any earthly vehicle. Both men looked up to see a sleek, crystalline craft descending through the clouds, its surface reflecting the pale sunlight like a prism. "What the hell is that?" Dane breathed, his scanner forgotten as he stared at the alien vessel. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. He knew, with horrible certainty, that this had to be connected to Kira. Someone had come looking for her. The craft landed with barely a whisper about 100 meters from the station. A section of its hull dissolved away, and a figure emerged that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Tall and imposing, with the same luminescent skin as Kira but bearing an aura of cold authority, the newcomer moved across the snow with predatory grace. "Greetings, humans," the figure called out, his voice carrying clearly despite the distance. "I am Zarin Keth of the Australis High Council. I seek a fugitive of our people who was detected in this area." Dane looked between Marcus and the alien, his face pale with shock. "Marcus," he whispered, "what the hell is going on?" Marcus's mind raced. There was no point in denying the situation now, the truth was literally standing in front of them. But he could still protect Kira, still give her a chance to escape. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus called back to Zarin, stepping forward to put himself between the alien and the direction of the caves where Kira was hidden. Zarin's expression hardened, his internal luminescence flickering with what looked like irritation. "Do not test my patience, human. My sensors detected the energy signature of a damaged Australis scout vessel in this location. The fugitive Kira Voss is here." "Even if she was," Marcus replied, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice, "she'd be under the protection of this research station. This is sovereign Earth territory." A harsh laugh escaped Zarin's lips. "Your primitive territorial claims mean nothing to the Australis Council. Kira Voss is bound by sacred law to fulfill her obligations to our species. She will return with me to complete her bonding ceremony." "And if she doesn't want to?" Marcus asked, his hands clenching into fists. "What she wants is irrelevant," Zarin replied coldly. "She was selected for genetic compatibility with Counselor Thane Valdris. Their union will produce offspring essential to our species' continued evolution. Her personal desires are a luxury we cannot afford." Behind him, Marcus heard Dane fumbling with his communication equipment, probably trying to contact Base Command. But before his colleague could make the call, another voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "My desires are not yours to dismiss, Zarin." Marcus turned to see Kira emerging from the direction of the caves, her posture proud despite the obvious exhaustion in her features. Her inner light pulsed with defiant energy as she approached the group. "Kira, no," Marcus started toward her, but she held up a hand to stop him. "It's all right, Marcus," she said softly, though her eyes never left Zarin. "I won't hide anymore." Zarin's expression shifted to something that might have been relief mixed with triumph. "Finally, you show wisdom. Come, we return to Australis immediately. The Council has been patient, but that patience has limits." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Kira replied firmly. "I renounce my bonds to Australis and to Thane Valdris. I choose my own path." "You cannot renounce what is written in your genetic code," Zarin snarled, his calm facade cracking. You were bred for this purpose, Kira. Your bloodline carries genes essential to our species' survival. Then find another way to survive, Kira shot back. I will not be a breeding vessel for your council's ambitions. Marcus watched this exchange with growing horror and understanding. Kira hadn't just fled an arranged marriage, she'd escaped what amounted to genetic slavery, a system that treated her as valuable only for her reproductive potential. This is insane, Dane whispered beside him, his communication device still clutched in his shaking hands. This can't be real. But Marcus was focused entirely on Kira, on the pain and determination warring in her expression. Without fully realizing he was moving, he stepped to her side, close enough that their shoulders touched. She said no, Marcus said quietly, addressing Zarin. That should be enough. Zarin's gaze shifted to Marcus with predatory interest. Ah, I see. The fugitive has compromised herself with primitive attachment. His smile was cruel. How fitting that her rebellion should end in such degradation. There's nothing degraded about caring for someone, Marcus replied, his anger building. About choosing love over duty. Love? Zarin laughed harshly. What would a short-lived human know of love? Your species barely understands basic attraction. More than you do, apparently, Kira interjected, moving closer to Marcus. At least humans understand that love cannot be manufactured through genetic matching. Something shifted in Zarin's expression, a flicker of genuine surprise. Kira, surely you haven't. He paused, his eyes narrowing as he studied the space between her and Marcus. No. It's impossible. What's impossible? Marcus asked, though part of him feared the answer. Kira's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that felt both natural and momentous. My people bond psychically with their chosen mates, she explained softly. It's a connection that transcends the physical, linking minds and hearts across any distance. And such bonds are supposed to be impossible between different species, Zarin added, his voice tight with disbelief. The neural pathways don't align, the quantum frequencies are incompatible. Supposed to be, Kira agreed, her gaze meeting Marcus's. But sometimes the heart finds ways that the mind cannot explain. Marcus felt it then, a subtle shift in his consciousness, like a door opening in a room he hadn't known existed. Suddenly he could sense Kira's emotions as clearly as his own, her fear, her hope, her growing love for this strange human who had shown her kindness without condition. This changes everything, Zarin breathed, his earlier arrogance replaced by something like awe. If cross-species bonding is possible, if humans are compatible with our neural patterns. It changes nothing, Kira said firmly. I still choose my own path, and I choose Marcus. The Council will never accept this, Zarin warned. They will see it as contamination, as proof that you have been corrupted beyond redemption. Then perhaps it's time for the Council to evolve, Kira replied. The sound of approaching aircraft interrupted their confrontation, human aircraft this time, drawn by Dane's emergency signal. Marcus could see helicopters on the horizon, growing larger by the moment. I have to report this, Dane said apologetically to Marcus. This is way above my clearance level. I know, Marcus replied, squeezing Kira's hand. Do what you have to do. Zarin looked between the approaching helicopters and his own vessel, calculation clear in his expression. This is not over, Kira. The Council will send others, and they will not be as understanding as I have been. Let them come, Kira said, her inner light blazing with determination. I have found something worth fighting for. As the helicopters landed and human officials began pouring out to secure the area, Marcus realized that their quiet romance had just become something much larger, a potential bridge between two species, or the spark that could ignite an interstellar conflict. But looking at Kira, feeling the unprecedented bond that connected their minds and hearts, he knew there was no going back. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Are you ready for this? He asked her quietly as officials from both species began to surround them. With you beside me? Kira smiled, her beauty radiant despite the uncertainty ahead. "I'm ready for anything." The crystal caves behind them pulsed with sympathetic light, as if the earth itself was celebrating this impossible union. And in that moment, as chaos erupted around them and their two worlds prepared to collide, Marcus felt more complete than he ever had in his carefully ordered, solitary life. Love, it seemed, was indeed worth any risk.